We'll see how many people are there. Do you guys see how many people are there? Because I'm not able to see the number of views because I started recording.
11.
Yeah, 11.
Mr. Shabir, we're just waiting for the attendees so that we can start off.
No problem. I'm going to leave my headphones on and just mute and turn off my camera.
Okay.
Till you're ready.
Good evening, everyone. We're going just to wait for 5 minutes until all the participants joined the webinar, and then we're going to start. Okay. Falsified drug is a business equivalent to murder. We are the lifesavers, and stopping this crime is our mission. For this reason, we are launching this event about patient-centered safety approaches to stop substandard and falsified medicine. Represented by RPSA and the IVPN Student listserv, I'm Hogar Yusri from Egypt. I will be moderating this webinar with my colleague Yovete from Rwanda. So welcome everyone, and glad that you are with us today. And now I will leave you with my colleague Yovete. Thank you very much. Hello to each and everyone. We're very excited to be with you on this very interesting topic, approaches to stop substandard and falsified medicine. So to go quick, because we are on time, I think, I would like to welcome the first speaker, who is Mr. Shabil. Mr. Shabil, we are very glad that you are here with us. Mr. Shabil, he is now an Executive Director of Partnership for Safe Medicine. He has participated nationally in resolving many problems regarding to counterfeit medicine. So he's going to discuss with us how substandard drug criminals are operating in the US today. For more information, I would like if you guys please, if you have any question or any other point of view, you can just type it in the chat box so that we can have some discussion after the presentation. Mr. Shabil, you're very welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I'm excited to share my personal passion and my professional passion about safety and understanding how safety is attacked by criminals. And so what I'd like to do today is just share my screen and give a presentation about how we've watched criminals in the US insert falsified and substandard medications into our supply chain. So let me just go ahead and start that. And if I could just get confirmation that you can see my title slide before I start. Okay. So we have mostly a falsified medicine problem in the United States right now, and I'll explain where that happens. Our organization, I think, is a pretty good model for how you monitor safety. There's a lot of organizations that monitor safety. We're an NGO. We're funded by trade associations that work in the supply chain from manufacturer to patients, including wholesalers and pharmacists in between. And basically, if you touch a medicine at some point from start to finish, you're a member of our coalition. Our issues with substandard medication versus falsified, and I'm using those words in the WHO sense and definition, is more falsified right now. You know, our biggest problem we're having is falsified controlled substances. And for us, controlled substances are substances that are prone to abuse. So things with fentanyl, painkillers, opioids, psychostimulants like Adderall and methamphetamine. Those are the big problem in the United States right now. They don't actually mostly flow through the legitimate supply chain. So when I do trainings for pharmacists, quite often when I'm talking about, let's say, a fake Percocet or painkiller and hydroxycodone or something like that, I point out that you're never going to touch this medicine, right? This is going to be sold through the dark web or through illegal websites or through social media or on the street. It's not going to end up in your pharmacy very often, if ever. We do also have falsified therapeutics. That's an issue, but it's much smaller. And our supply chain is really well regulated. I'll show you actually right now when I show you an example about you may be able to get away with inserting a falsified therapeutic into the supply chain, but there's going to be a long time in which people are going to find lots of paperwork to come back and get you after the fact to answer for your crime. So to start with, what we're experiencing right now in the US is a very, very bad crisis of drugs of abuse. For the last 12 months, we have had about 106,000 deaths from people dying from drugs of abuse. Sometimes because they were knowingly struggling with addiction, and sometimes because somebody made fake medication, a falsified medication that had a fatal amount of an opioid in it. So fentanyl is the big problem we're having right now in the United States. People can synthesize fentanyl. It's mostly being synthesized by the Mexican drug cartels, which operate south of our border. And they do it with help from Chinese chemical manufacturers who make them the precursor chemicals and then ship them to Mexico, and then they do the final synthesis. They're making fake opioids. They're making fake Percocets and oxycodones. And when they make them with fentanyl, if you know anything about fentanyl, it's a very narrow therapeutic index drug. A tiny amount is medically effective. So the old chestnut, the old saying amongst narcotics investigators in our law enforcement is that 1 milligram will make you high of fentanyl, 2 milligrams will kill you. And so if you look at how much 2 milligrams is, it's a tiny amount that would fit on the tip of your finger. And so for an unofficial pill maker to put too much in is really easy. And so we have so many people who have died because somebody was making pills and that pill had 2 milligrams of fentanyl versus 1, which is easy to do. We're also seeing a rush of fake psychostimulants. We call them Adderall. They're for treating attention deficit disorder. And what's happening is that people are making them with methamphetamine instead of the actual psychostimulant that's provided when a manufacturer makes it. And we found them in many states throughout the US. And this is one of the things that my organization does is we look for incidences of this and we track and see how big the problem is getting. So we're seeing an emergence of this. The fake painkillers with fentanyl, those spread throughout the entire US over about 5 years, completing their blanket last year. So, and this is still rising. Our deaths are still rising from our synthetic opioid crisis. Some of the things that we've seen how criminals have changed their work is that, you know, starting when we first did our first tracking in 2016, we were seeing fake pills in many, many states in the US. On the top left, you can see the states that are sort of salmon colored. That is where we found pills, and we also found pills in the red states, but we also confirmed death, a fatality from them. And over the next 5 years, those deaths and pills spread throughout the whole United States until last year we confirmed that every state had at least one fatality from one of these pills with too much fentanyl in it. Some other things that have happened is that we have seen the number of deadly pills when they're seized by police go up in number, in percentage. So we used to see 1 in 10 pills had a deadly amount of fentanyl in it. Now we see 4 in 10. So it explains why our fatalities are rising as well, because so many more pills have a deadly amount of fentanyl in them. And then these other two trends that you see in the bottom right go together. We've seen the criminals add sales methods to their techniques, and now we're seeing them market their fake pills via social media. The prime platform for that is something called Snapchat. The problem with that is that Snapchat has a very young user base. Lots of teenagers use Snapchat. And so what's happening is that our victims, our fatalities are getting younger as a result, because the drug dealers have found that if they market through social media, they have a lot of customers, but those customers are younger. And I don't know if you remember what it was like to be 14 years old, but at no point did you think that a decision like, oh, taking this one pill is going to kill me, right? Because never in your life had you ever seen a single pill that would kill you. In fact, even adults are quite surprised when they learn that a single pill could kill them. Something else we've seen is it used to be in the US that these fake pills came from China, and they would make them and press them, and they would put them in small packages, right? Like a package this big could hold, I don't know, 400 pills, and you could ship it to the US, and there's too many packages of this size that come into the US every day to look at them all, to x-ray them all. And so they would often get through and get to the American customer. And what happened was there was a lot of work with the Chinese government to regulate the sale of that, and they did some crackdowns in China. And so the Chinese got out of that business, and instead they decided to sell the chemicals to make fentanyl to Mexican cartels. Now, Mexican cartels buy those chemicals, make the final step, press the pills, and then ship it into the US, because they've got 50 years of experience smuggling across the southern border of the United States. So they're really good at it. So that's how it's changed. And in terms of tracking the social media deaths, you know, we have tracked deaths from teenagers who bought pills or were marketed to on Snapchat to 17 states. So there's quite a lot of this problem happening, and we're still getting new states being added to the list. So it's a growing problem. You know, so I talked about the different ways in which it's sold. You know, this is a now defunct dark web market called Silk Road. But, you know, you could buy many, many different types of drugs, both pure form drugs and pressed pills in blister packs, you know, with packaging that made them look real if you wanted on on the dark web. It still is a big source of crime for this problem. And this is an example of why we are unable to find all of the small packages that come into the US each year. This on the top right, this is literally the stream of packages that inspectors have to look through every day. At that particular facility, they get about 1 million small packages a day, and they physically can't x-ray or have special dogs look at them all. They certainly can't open them or test them all. And you can see that in just a week at JFK, they set aside and seized all of that suspect medical product. Even the process of where to put it all every day is a logistical nightmare for our inspectors. And they do the best they can, but there is process they have to go through because, some shipments are legitimate and some are not, and they have to figure out which ones are. So it's a really hard problem. It explains how it ends up in the United States. We also have a problem where people just put up websites and sell illegal substances into America, again, shipping them with a small package. This is not a real website. I had to have my staff make it up. But this is a real snapshot from a real website that was selling all of these substances that require a prescription. And they were just selling them without regard for any rules or safety of the patient. It's really, really challenging to do this enforcement across borders too, right? When someone in Turkey has a website, or the Bahamas has a website, and they're selling illegal products into the US, we can't just go and arrest them, right? There's rules about, you have to work with the Turkish police or the Caribbean, the Bahama police, and you can't just roll in there and start searching their web servers or their warehouses or anything. It's very, very complicated. When the good guys play by the rules and the bad guys don't play by any rules, it becomes very difficult to get them into court. Lastly, the traditional ways in which people sell drugs in the US are still active. This is a drug deal happening in Baltimore, Maryland, that just happened recently. And it happens in every city in the world, but it definitely is happening here and is part of our crisis. So that is the illegitimate supply chain, the supply chain that does not go through licensed professionals. Now let's talk about one of the really interesting cases that is being prosecuted right now of falsified therapeutics in the legitimate supply chain. So this is a story that has been unfolding very, very slowly. And I don't have any special knowledge of the inside of the investigation. So I'm telling you the things that are public so far. We started getting alerts from legitimate manufacturers of HIV and hepatitis C drugs that they had found counterfeits. And there wasn't a lot of detail given, but what they did say was that it was being sold in real bottles, but the medicine inside was fake. And the medicines in question here, HIV and Hep C medications in the US, from at least one of these companies, is sold in a bottle that has a 30-day supply of tablets. And that bottle, the wholesale cost to the pharmacy is about $3,000 in many cases. So it's a life-saving miracle drug, but it's also very expensive even by US standards. And it wasn't until about this January that they actually started to reveal details. And what they had done was that you had criminals, and they went out and they found people who were poor and got access to discount medicine. And we do this because, it's more important, depending on where you live in the US, your local government may think it's more important to have you manage your HIV or cure your hepatitis C than it is to not. And so we will spend money to provide low-cost drugs to you so that you can have access to that medicine and treatment, right? Especially here in San Francisco where I live, that's an important value. And so it's a lot of where our tax money goes in healthcare is to make sure that everybody has access to this medicine. Well, what was happening was that the criminals were buying these bottles from people who got them. And because they're poor, the money, in some cases, they decided to choose the money over the treatment. And so, maybe they needed to pay for rent, maybe they needed food, whatever it is, they decided to sell their medication to these people. And what happened was they took the real medication out, redispensed it to patients, and got paid for it. And then they made fake pills and put them in the bottle, put foil covers on them, sealed them back up, and then they had a problem that they had to solve, which is that they had a bottle of fake medication that should net them $3,000 US in profit, which is a lot of money for pressing chalk pills. However, they needed to sell it. And we actually have a lot of rules and record keeping around how you sell pharmaceuticals in the US. And so what they did was they first found a company that had a legitimate wholesaler's license, a distributor's license, and they pulled them into the scheme. And once they got it, because they had a license, they were able to sell it to people. But there's a couple of challenges. You have to have a sales history, right? And these sales histories are electronic. So they had to find pharmacies that would actually be willing to buy these with just a paper history, which is still legal for another few years before it's gone. And so they made up a fake paper history and then they sold it. And they told the pharmacies that you can make a lot of money, right? This bottle, you normally buy it for $3,000 and you dispense it for $3,200, but we'll sell it to you for $2,600. So instead of making $200 on the bottle, you're going to make $600. And pharmacies, I don't know how it works in any other part of the world, but our pharmacies, many of them do not make a lot of money. You don't go into pharmacy because you want to be Elon Musk. You go into pharmacy because you have a calling, and financially it's a good job, but it's not an amazing job financially. And so the pharmacies, many of them bought it. Some of them turned it down. They said it sounded suspect and not safe, but so many of them bought it. When they finally wrapped this up, and I'll explain how they did some of that, they actually seized 85,000 bottles of counterfeit medication, which is worth about $250 million US, which is stunning. It's one of the largest seizures ever. We had a number of patients who received this product, this fake product. And I think that was probably how the scheme was discovered. As patients said, this doesn't taste right. My doctor says the medication's not working, and yet this is the same medication I've been getting for a long time. And they pulled all of these people into court. The thing that undid the crime was, and the hero here, one of the heroes is a pharmacist actually, was the fact that we have implemented serialization on our medicine. When a bottle like this bottle of this Gilead product comes off the factory line, it has a barcode and it has a serial number. Of course, it has a lot and expiration. And everybody that touches that bottle has to record electronically the serial number on the way. So the wholesaler had to do it, the pharmacist had to do it. And the greatest story of this is that a pharmacist got this offer and looked at the paper records of sale and decided that he was a little suspicious, and he called somebody who was on it and said, this piece of paper says that you sold this bottle of medication to this other entity who says they're selling it to me. Did you actually do that? And that wholesaler was able to say, we looked in our computer, we've never had that bottle of medicine. Whatever you're holding is a lie. And that pharmacist returned the shipment and said, I'm not paying for this. This is not right. And I'm assuming also reported them to the Food and Drug Administration. But the whole reason that this whole scheme involved getting real bottles was because they needed to be able to show that they actually had these barcodes, but at the same time, the barcodes undermined their whole scheme at the same time. So here's some examples. You'll see our pharmacist would see an email saying that, I've got this medicine, it's close to expiration, so I can give it to you for a 5% discount, which, for $3,200 is a lot of money. And we're a real wholesaler, and here's the sales history. That's an example. Another one would be, and it's a big one. Our supply chain is pretty tightly regulated, so medicine doesn't usually cross a border once it's been manufactured, unless it's being shipped in from the factory itself. So we would see things people say, oh, a company in Puerto Rico ordered too much of this, and they're a U.S. territory. So the medicine went to Puerto Rico and then it came back here to New York State. And for that reason, it's near expiration and we're going to give it to you for a discount. That doesn't happen, right? Medicine doesn't make wild transits geographically. Yeah, and we think that it was probably patients at some point who tipped this off. The criminals didn't just make placebo pills. They also, in some cases, made pills with like painkiller, like over-the-counter painkiller, like ibuprofen. And in one case, they actually made it with an antipsychotic active ingredient. And the patient who received it had a medical adverse event as a result that was very dangerous. There was a lot of people in this, a big crime like this. They had ringleaders, suppliers, money launderers, marketers. Some pharmacists fell for it as well. And it was really traumatic. All of these were medicines that all were counterfeited in that process, and they've really, I think, put an end to the ring at this point because they've gotten everybody. Here's some maps of where the different elements of the criminals were. And then this is sort of how we teach pharmacists to spot it. One of the things that is possible, I think, and applicable to wherever you are in the world is that, companies like Gilead or Pfizer, in many cases, they will tell you that they only sell their medication from the manufacturing facility to a limited set of authorized distributors. And so when a pharmacist gets a transaction sales log and sees that it was sold to somebody not on that list, they can actually immediately know that that's falsified. That company, if they have a published list of distributors and you are claiming that you're a distributor and you're not on that list, right off the bat, that's a way that a pharmacist can tell, I think you're offering me something sketchy. And that is the advice I give pharmacists when I train them, as I will later this month when I travel to do some training, is, look and see if the person says they got it from a distributor that's not a named distributor on the website. And that's it for the detail of falsified medicines. I can answer questions. And then I can cede the floor to someone else if that would be helpful.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shapir, for this fruitful session. It was very amazing how you explained the concept of fake bills and how they are marketed through the social media. And of course, the part of counterfeit drugs and how the government are trying to solve this problem. It was very amazing and fruitful. Thank you so much. Actually, we are having questions. And one of the most common questions that was asked, how consumers can protect themselves and their family from the fake bills. Especially you have said that they are posted through the social media. So families want to protect their teenager, how they can do this.
So there's two different problems. I'll talk about the fake controlled substances first and social media. We and many groups, when you have 100,000 deaths in the last 12 months, a lot of people become very important activists. They take up as their mission. When you lose a family member to a fake pill, you become very passionate. And they all have variations of simply saying, please talk to your kids, right? Please talk to your teenagers, explain to them that fake pills exist. Fake pills, even a half a pill can have so much fentanyl in it, it can kill you, do exist. And to try and just make them aware that that's not a safe way. And the line I hear a lot is, if it didn't come from a pharmacist or a hospital, it's not safe, right? And if you try and instill this into your children, that helps. There's other aspects to that as well, but primarily it's about education, because you can't, we talk about this, that you can't arrest your way out of it, right? There's more criminals and they work faster than we can actually do investigations and arrest them. So the only way to keep people safe is to educate them. On the therapeutic side, because the risk is so much lower, because our supply chain is so highly regulated, we still do train patients. And what we do is we tell them, for example, before you're out of medicine, order the next supply, right? Go to your pharmacist and say, I've got 3 days left. I'd like to refill. And then when you get the new medicine, look at it, right? We tell them to compare labels. We tell them to open them up and compare pills, and then to talk to your physician, right? As you're taking it, talk to your pharmacist, talk to your physician. If you are living with managed HIV and your HIV appears to be suddenly unmanaged, you have symptoms, you have labs that aren't right, one of the things to talk about with your pharmacist and your physician is whether or not the medicine might be fake, whether it might not be therapeutically effective. It's sad that we have to consider that as a possibility when you're working with your physician on managing a disease, but it's just a reality. So that's what we tell patients who are taking a therapeutic, that to protect themselves.
Yeah, thank you so much. So the last question, it says that you mentioned about the barcode of packaging. So would single dose identification for each drug be worthwhile to reduce counterfeit?
That's a really good question. Someone just asked me this question today on LinkedIn. They were talking about micro tags on individual pills, which obviously can only work on pills, right? Because if you're getting a injectable, a sterile injectable, that's not actually something you can barcode in the liquid.
Yes.
It's an interesting question. I think that, and the answer I gave when someone else asked me earlier was that I think it depends upon your environment. Right. In an environment where you actually have a highly regulated supply chain, I'm not sure it would be worth it because of the expense. In a place where your supply chain is known to be very porous and regulatory enforcement is difficult, you might find it justified. I've seen a lot of proposals and technologies that put, micro tags and other things on actual pills. And I just don't know. I don't know what the full scope would be in terms of cost, but I suspect that it would be a very difficult balancing act to justify cost when it might be better to just more highly regulate and enforce good behavior in the supply chain.
Okay, we have another question, if your time's allowed.
Yes.
Thank you. Can blockchain help regulate counterfeit drugs?
I think that blockchain is mostly a distraction in this area, right? The problem isn't that first of all, blockchain is sort of terrible for the climate because of the amount of energy used. But the problem isn't that we don't have a good way of keeping records. You can see from this example I just gave that we actually do, without having to use blockchain, we actually have the ability to do traceability of a medicine all the way through the supply chain. And that pharmacist who actually asked about the provenance of the medicine and the pedigree, did you have it, was able to get his question answered. And that was all without blockchain. So the problem isn't record keeping, which blockchain really helps with, or reliability of records. The problem is both enforcement, making sure people do the right thing and don't make the wrong choice for money, and then speed. And I think that the speed is actually something that worked out pretty well in this case. So I don't think blockchain is what we need here.
Yes, great. So the last question, are there any other technology that you think is a good idea to implement in the supply chain?
So at least for the US, I'm not an expert
Yes,
in any other part of the world. What we need to do is we actually have a 10-year rollout for those barcodes. And that just takes it to the pharmacists. It's not yet something that a patient would see. I think we need to finish over the next 2 years our rollout of the barcodes from manufacturing floor to pharmacist. And then the technology that I would add there would be that when a pharmacist dispenses a medication, it should invalidate, there should be a record that medicine was dispensed, so no one can reuse the bottle. That is the technology I would add, because that crime that I described could not have been done if when they dispensed the bottle, they basically tainted the barcode and said, this is no good anymore. If that had been done, then it would have been a much harder crime to commit. That's the one technology I would add.
Yes, thank you so much. Just another last question.
Sure.
Thank you. There's someone is asking for the pharmacist in the Gilead case, the ones that didn't catch the falsified reports before the warning. Were they prosecuted for the negligence or educated on how to prevent it from happening again?
So I will tell you from what I've learned that there were almost 1,000 pharmacies that participated in this scheme, which makes me very sad, because I've studied this for almost 2 decades, and it's almost never pharmacists who are the weak point in the supply chain, which is why this whole thing makes me sad. I will say that not all of them were prosecuted. They were all educated, but not all of them were prosecuted. But there were some pharmacists that bought falsified product, and then there was a big public warning, and they were warned. And then they continued buying falsified product. And those pharmacies were prosecuted, and they're being prosecuted right now. And they probably wish they had never touched it, because whatever extra money they made is not worth what they're going through in terms of legal punishment at this moment.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Shapir. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So now we're going to move to our next speaker, Mr. Lazar. He's the Managing Director of Rwanda FDA Pharmacovigilance and Safety Monitoring. Mr. Lazar is going to present the current trend of substandard falsified medicine in Rwanda compared to other countries. So welcome, Mr. Lazar.
Okay, thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be part of this event. And if you allow, I can share immediately my presentation.
You should be able to share it through the screen as well, yes.
Okay. Yes. Okay, thank you. Just as the moderator said, I'm Lazare Nhirenganya. I'm working at Rwanda Food and Drugs Authority, which is a national medicine regulatory authority in Rwanda. And I head the division for pharmacovigilance and safety monitoring. It's a division which includes pharmacovigilance, post-marketing surveillance, and also clinical trial regulations. So my topic is on current trends of substandard and or falsified medicine in Rwanda compared to other countries. So if I go immediately to the outline, we'll be showing some introduction. Just already talk about the detection, prevention, and the response to substandard and falsified medical products in Rwanda. And I will give you some figures or some data on substandard and falsified medical products in Rwanda, and also neighboring countries, and also across the world, as far as my topic was to compare, which was not really easy task. So coming to definition, thank you first of all to Shabir. He has given the good experience from US. And I would come to the basic concepts of a safe medical product, starting with definitions, where WHO defines substandard products like out of specification or products authorized, but which fail to meet either the required standard or their specification, while falsified medical products are defined as deliberately or fraudulently misrepresented their identity, composition, or source. I define those terms because we'll be using them during this webinar session. And coming to the global burden of safe medical products, as per WHO reports, is that 1 over 10 medicine in low and middle income countries is either substandard or falsified, which is really a high burden in the health system in general, as far as medicine are vital products in management of disease. So according again to WHO reports, is that around 72,000 up to 169 deaths are caused by substandard and or falsified antibiotics in under 5 years for children suffering from pneumonia. Again, in sub-Saharan Africa, there are around 31 deaths up to 116,000 deaths, which are caused by substandard and falsified antimalarials. And also they are, of course, very costly, around 30 billion US dollar, which are spent those falsified or standard medical products in low and middle income countries. So as pharmacists, we all know that the quality of medicine can be impacted in different ways, starting with manufacturing process, packaging, transportation, storage condition, and so on. And once medicine are of poor quality, they can lead to different impacts or consequences, including lack of therapeutic benefits, of course. Even they can lead to death, as we have seen from the previous presentations. They can also lead to adverse reactions, serious adverse drug reactions, but also they are also loss, or they can lead to loss of resources, financial resources, and also loss of credibility of health system in general. So coming back to Rwanda, we have some legal framework, of course, in matter related to medical products. First of all, the government of Rwanda has established Rwanda FDA, which is mandated to protect public health through assuring the safety, efficacy, and the quality of regulated products. And once we say regulated products, it's a wide range. They include medicine, vaccines, biologicals, and so on. We have now already different regulations. For example, regulation governing post-marketing surveillance, regulation and guidelines for recall, management of unfit products, and so on. So we, as a National Medicine Regulatory Authority, we ensure the quality, safety, and efficacy of medical products through different regulatory functions, which includes post-marketing surveillance and pharmacovigilance. And also we have laboratory testings and also medicine evaluation and registration, premises licensing, inspection and surveillance, and so on. So WHO has put in place different measures for containing safe products, starting with prevention. There are different pillars and components to be taught by different regulatory authorities, by different countries, to prevent safe medical products. For example, we should have some educational and awareness session. As we were seeing in the first session, in Rwanda already we have some talk show on TV training for professionals, and we raise awareness through different channels so that people can be aware of safe medical products. We have legal framework, we have different laws and regulation already established, and we have, again, multi-stakeholder engagement, where we have regular meetings with regular stakeholders involved in supply chain management, and we have also clear communication with them. Here in the country, the supply chain integrity is well controlled, both private and the public. On the component of detection, we have inspectors at port of entries, and also actions are taken once there is a suspected SF product. We have, again, reporting channels, including reporting tools available in different pharmaceutical establishments, toll-free number where they can give reports of suspected poor quality products. We have risk-based inspection, but also we have a quality control laboratory. On the components of response, we have a system for alerts once a safe product is suspected, but also we have an established procedure for recalls of substandard or falsified medical products. But also we have access to the WHO Global Surveillance and Monitoring System. So those are reporting tools already where professionals, public can report any suspected poor quality products. After the reports is received, we investigate and we can sample for quality control analysis once necessary. If I can share with you some data we have. First of all, I can mention that Rwanda FDA is a newly established institution, but we started receiving suspected poor quality reports from health professionals, public, and as you see on this graph, is that in 2018, we received about 80 reports, while 2020, it increased at 141, and in 2021, we received 42 reports on suspected poor quality products. From those suspected poor quality products reports, different recalls after investigation and the confirmation of suspected or substandard products, the authority, I mean Rwanda FDA, issued recalls to those products. You see those are numbers of batches that were recorded from the market due to quality issue, starting with misoprostol, which is a very sensitive and very vital product. After quality control analysis, we found that it was at 38% of the active ingredient, which is really a problem and it could result in a different adverse events, including uterine rupture. So we have recorded from the market different products, including cloxacillins, Debrida, azithromycin, even rapid tests, for example, Helicobacter pylori rapid test, which were giving false positive results, and we validated and found that they do not have the required sensitivity rates. We record different, even hand sanitizer in this period of COVID-19 pandemic. Different hand sanitizer were recorded from the market as far as they were of poor quality, not fulfilling the requirements for hand sanitizers. So all those products recorded from the market were manufactured from different countries, including India, China, Kenya, France, Belgium, South Africa, and so on, meaning that just substandard products can be from different sources across the world. If you can see some pictures of those recorded products, you see misoprostol, you see paracetamol suspension, and the different veterinary medicine also were found substandard and were recorded from the market. So quickly, in Rwanda, we have a post-marketing surveillance plan for antimalarials, which go up to level for health centers, even to the community, because we have what you call community health workers that administer antimalarials. We sample and we bring them to the laboratory to check the quality of the medicine. Good information is that 100% of samples that were collected from different levels of supply chain were complying to quality standards. But we have regular and annual post-marketing surveillance plan to different products. So looking to the neighboring countries, in Tanzania, for example, some falsified products were identified. For example, you see this is an over-the-counter medicine for free called caps, which were identified and were falsified. In Kenya, also, the Pharmacy and the Poison Board has identified and detected different falsified products from Primaquine, you see, and others, meaning that in different countries, you can have different or many falsified medical products. That means we should be awake for the quality of medicines. You see, for example, different medicines are sold on the streets, especially in Western Africa. That's also, again, a problem which can lead to different cases of substandard and falsified medical products. If you can retrieve or check information in the WHO Global Surveillance and Monitoring System for substandard and falsified medical products, there are reports from different countries where SF products are identified. You see, for example, reports from 2021, 2019, and so on. And curiously, I have found even because we make regular checks in that WHO Global Surveillance Monitoring System, even recently for the COVID-19 vaccine, you see AstraZeneca vaccine were found in the Islamic Republic of Iran being falsified. You see, for example, Pfizer and BioNTech vaccines, which was identified also being falsified, meaning that those falsifiers have advanced technology and the tricks to make money by falsifying medical products. That means all health professionals should be awake for those quality medical products. Here, I have tried to retrieve from the global system different reports from 2018, 19, different alerts that were issued by WHO on falsified medical products. You see, for example, vaccine, anti-rabies vaccine, quinine. You see, for example, misoprostol, oral cholera vaccine, all kind of medicines that were reported to be falsified from different countries, Ghana, you see Bangladesh, and so on, Uganda, and so on. So quickly, we have different interventions, of course, which are implemented here in Rwanda, but also in different countries. We have, first of all, physical verification at point of entry of medical products to check even the preliminary information. We have also annual post-marketing surveillance plan, where we sample from different points of the supply chain, and we make quality control analysis. But also we have joint inspection across the country annually in different facilities to check the quality of medical products. We have now activity that we are organizing at East African Community Region, where we are planning to have joint post-marketing surveillance activities. But also we have participated in Interpol operation in Africa, of course, to curb those SF medical products. So for sustainability, to have medical products of good quality, the Ministry of Health has already endorsed the National Vision Strategy, which is a strategy for pharmaceutical traceability, leveraging GS1 global standard. This is a track and a trace system that is going to be implemented in Rwanda. Now we are developing different regulations as one way to prevent SF medical products. So we involve, of course, different stakeholders from the supply chain, and we have information from the source, the manufacturers, and information will be used across the whole supply chain up to the delivery points of the medicines. We have some preliminary components that we can check on a medicine to suspect the quality. First of all, starting with the visual inspection, the organoleptic properties of the products, such as color, taste, odor, can give information and can make you suspect the quality of medicine. The consistency of information also. Pharmacists and other health professionals should check even the consistency of information, because people falsifying products sometimes have or make some errors. Even we can take packaging. How is the primary packaging, secondary packaging, the container closure system? We should check all those are preliminary, which can lead us to suspect SF medical products. We apply what we call free level testing, starting with level 1, which is about visual inspection. Level 2 is field-based screening, and level 3, which is compendial testing. We should have multi-sectorial joint efforts, of course, to ensure the quality of medicine, starting with regulatory authorities, manufacturers, health facilities, even patient and consumers, laboratory, central medical store. Everyone should play a role to ensure the quality of medical products. We have recently established a committee, post-marketing surveillance committee, which is a multidisciplinary committee with different stakeholders, because one institution cannot prevent or work on the quality of medical products in the country. We have different strategies which should be implemented also in different countries, including registration process of all medical products, the good manufacturing inspections, where you have to inspect even the manufacturing facility to check how is it operating, the existence first of all, and also we are implementing and we are in the process of having medicine regulatory harmonization in different regions. But we should raise the awareness, and the exchange of information is very necessary to prevent those SF medical products. So to conclude my presentation, colleagues, SF medical products are a significant threat to health and promote drug-resistant infections, and it can cause safety issues and waste of resources. But there is need for joint actions, collaboration, and strengthening of regulatory system worldwide. Thank you very much. Here are some references, and I finish my presentation. Thank you, and I submit, moderator.
Thank you very much, Lazaro. Your presentation was very insightful. It shows that Rwanda has come with meaningful strategies to deal with falsified medicine, but I liked how you ended up with the problem that might be caused by falsified medicine. And I want to ask you, I have one question, and I would like that someone who has a question also can type it in the chat box so that we can see it. My question is, like, would joint activities and collaboration among various high-risk countries help us to reduce counterfeit drug? Like, what do we really need as countries to collaborate so as to fight this issue, which is a global issue, as I can see, this global issue of counterfeit medicine?
Yeah, thank you very much, Yvette, for the good question. Just as I concluded my presentation, there is need for collaboration. There is need for exchange of information. And the way to do this, first of all, there is a kind of networking of regulatory authorities. For example, national medicine regulatory authorities can have kind of exchange of information, networking, collaboration during investigation. For example, if a product is identified here in Rwanda and is stated to be manufactured in India, we should request information from Indian regulatory authority. And once we have information, we can take a regulatory decision, but also report immediately to WHO, because once you report an identified falsified product to WHO, it's seen already by all the world, and they can check in the supply chain the existence or availability of those products. So that's one way, but also they can exchange technologies and expertise, because to identify those falsified products is not easy. So that's why there is need also to exchange expertise, laboratories, and so on. So there are different ways to collaborate in the aim of combating or preventing those SF medical products. Thank you.
Absolutely. I have one other question. As I'm waiting for others to ask also, if you have a very burning question, please don't hesitate to ask. The second question that I have, in the strategies you said for fighting this issue, you said about the awareness of professionals and also the patient about this issue. How is it impacting? How is it decreasing this severity of falsified medicine? Because I see that social media and are very impacting this issue. So how is it decreasing this issue so that other countries can look on it also?
Thank you very much. Just education, public awareness is among the key strategy used, of course, to prevent, to detect those SF medical products. For example, I remember once we were on TV and we were sharing on poor quality products. And I was surprised once a mom arriving at home has found that the paracetamol suspension that were being given to his kid is suspected to be of poor quality. And she has already called. And once we investigated, we found that all the products had the quality issues, and we have removed the product from the markets. So that's a short or a small example, which shows once we raise the awareness on how to suspect the quality of products can contribute to prevent those SF products. And also, there are different sessions that can be given in health facilities. Even pharmacists can educate patients once they come. Is make sure you check every time and give them some tips of the quality of medicine. So raising the awareness will increase also the reports on suspected poor quality products. Once the reports are increased and investigations are made, you can detect early those SF medical products, because sometimes you can have a batch which is substandard, another one is not substandard. For example, you can have some products with the same packaging, same color, and everything, but there is maybe one information which is not consistent. So once you educate your population to suspect and to report, it can contribute to the prevention of those SF medical products. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rosalie. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you too.
Yeah. So we go to the next presentation if there is no other question. Yeah.
I think we
as
can move on to the next presentation. Yes.
Yeah, of course. So as I told you, we are very lucky to be having different speakers from different parts of the world. We are going to welcome Dr. Eek. Dr. Eek, it's a very great pleasure to be with you. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. Hello to everybody.
Hi. So Mr. Eek is going to discuss with us on case study on prevention initiative against product crime. Mr. Eek is now a global quality issue manager at Roche. You are very welcome. And please, if there is any question that you might have, please type in the chat box so that you can go with Mr. Eek. Thank you. You are very welcome, and we hope to learn a lot from you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the introduction. Before sharing the slides, I would like to make some comments. First of all, thank you for the invitation. And second, I just had a chance to listen to the presentation of Lazare, and I was really amazed about what the Rwanda FDA is doing. And at the end of my presentation, you will see that the conclusions will be the same. Awareness is key, and the collaboration is also key. Because on a daily basis, as you just mentioned, I am a global quality manager. I'm used to manage quality issues, regulatory issues, drug shortages regarding products that are manufactured by Roche. I work for Roche, but I manage also falsified medicines cases, which is completely different. And I also know a little bit, not personally, but Shabir, because I am used to listen to his videos on his website, Safe Medicines, but I couldn't take the time to go through his session. What I would like to mention first is that why did I do that prevention initiative with one colleague from Roche? Because I've seen by managing on a daily basis counterfeit/falsified medicines. I will not go into details regarding counterfeit and falsified, some words a little bit later. I've seen that sometimes I was a little bit frustrated because we plain sample, we did investigate on that there was nothing inside, only a tiny part of the API and so on. Then we wrote to whom it may concern letters for the affiliates to be shared with the local health authorities. And then it stopped there. The goal, if you have to deal, as mentioned by Lazare before, if you have to deal with a falsified medicine, the goal is to try to dismantle this criminal organization, which is of course really difficult. And then I thought that we should, from a company perspective, initiate some initiatives in the field, because I'm used to mention that anti-counterfeit features are key. Serialization, as mentioned a little bit at the end of the presentation of Shabir, when I could step in, serialization is of course key. Unique coding is key. Having a robust supply chain is also key. But nevertheless, now I come back to the words of Lazare, having awareness is very important. Just one example, and then I will go through my presentation. I am a French citizen. I work in Switzerland, and sometimes when I am in the public transportation in Switzerland, and when I speak about my job, not each and every day, but sometimes with friends or other people, when I speak about falsified medicines, people are completely astonished. That means they are not aware about the danger. Maybe if you go into the data from the WHO, you would see that Switzerland is maybe less impacted by counterfeits than some other countries. But nevertheless, Switzerland is also impacted. And being aware of that is important to pay attention. So I will now share my screen and Can you see it?
Yes, sir. I can see we can see
Yes.
your slides. Yes.
Okay, thank you. But I will go in the, I'm not used to work with here. It's here. Yes. Okay. It's fine with you?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, excellent. So the goal of the presentation is to give you an insight on a prevention initiative against product crime conducted by Roche in Mexico. I will let you know why Mexico in some minutes. Regarding the agenda, first of all, the impact, problem statement, and scope, but Lazar and Shabir went through that already before. Then I would like to give you some details about a meeting with local health authorities, but also a meeting with a local medical institution in Mexico, of course, and with a local distributor and the lessons learned. Here already, based on the agenda, you see that our goal was to reach out to external stakeholders. So first point, when we speak about product crime, we do not speak only about counterfeits, falsified medicines, but also about thefts and diversions. I have, from a Roche perspective, many stories about thefts. That means products that have been stolen, for instance, tempered, manipulated, and then entered again the legitimate supply chain, considered later as falsified medicines. What is the impact of product crime in general? Of course, patient safety is at risk. This was mentioned probably many times during these sessions. That means I will not go into details due to adverse events, therapeutic failure, deaths. What we had in Mexico, in order to explain you why we decided to begin with Mexico, is that we had counterfeited Avastin. Some of you may know Avastin for different cancer indications, but also may be used by some ophthalmologists into the eye in order to be used instead of another Roche product, which is nevertheless more expensive. The issue was not to have Avastin injected into the eyes, but the issue was that Avastin was counterfeited Avastin, and some people were getting blind, which is of course not nice. The risk is also to have a loss of confidence in the public healthcare systems. You have countries where the healthcare systems are more robust, more solid than in other countries. If you begin as a citizen to have less confidence in your healthcare system, there is a danger that you would try to provide or to get your medicines maybe from illegal channels or from the street, as there was a picture before showed by Lazar. And of course, we are used to mention that we should buy products from legal sources, legal supply chains. On the other side, in some countries, some important products, life-saving products, are not registered, or not launched, or not reimbursed by the health authorities, which make the issue more complicated and which make people trying to get these goods from websites, for instance. But if you go to websites, you have the risk to be confronted with illegal websites and not to get genuine products, of course. And if you would get a genuine product, you have no clue about the storage and the transportation conditions. Last point, most important point, is of course the patient safety, but there is, in case of falsified medicines, an impact on the brand, on the company reputation. I remember some 10 years ago, we had a huge Avastin case in the US, but it has begun in Turkey, went, if I remember correctly, because it was a long time ago, through Egypt, through Switzerland, but not on the market, within the customs. It ended up in the UK and then in the US. Shabir knows, of course, about that one. I think nowadays you have some US physicians which have been arrested, but who are in jail in the US due to that. This was a huge, had a huge impact. So Mexico is considered from a Roche perspective spot country in terms of product crime due to falsified medicines, and I repeat myself, thefts, diversions, and counterfeits. What I mentioned before, you could ask immediately, what is the difference between a counterfeit and a falsified medicine? I will speak in that session about falsified medicines, But some years ago, or within Roche, we speak about counterfeits in order not to change all our documentation. A counterfeit is for us a falsified medicine, but if you go to the EMA documentation, the European Medicines Agency, they do the difference between a falsified medicine, which is for which the definition is what was presented by Lazare before, and a counterfeit is more linked with a patent infringement. That means I will not speak about counterfeits, but about falsified medicines. The goal of our initiative was to raise the awareness. This was clearly mentioned before, that this is really important at a local level, because I have a global position managing the counterfeit cases from each and every country in the world, but we wanted to go into details based on the data, based on the number of cases we had in Mexico, and Mexico is not the only one hotspot country, but we decided to begin with Mexico. You will see later why also. And the goal was to foster relationships with internal colleagues as well as external stakeholders. I would say to help the internal Roche colleagues in Mexico, and to do the link between these colleagues and the external stakeholders. Within Roche Mexico, you can see here that many people were involved. And this is important. It comes back to the very last point of the last presentation about a joint collaboration within the company with quality colleagues, regulatory, security, of course, logistics, communications, legal, business. Why communications, for instance? When Avastin in the US, I mentioned 2 minutes ago, at the end of the day, it was in many newspapers. That's why I mentioned before impact on the brand and company reputation. If you see the name of a company in the newspaper attached with a wrong, not a wrong message, but a wrong signal, you would not, as a client, as a customer, buy these products. The external contacts, wholesalers, distributors, hospitals, clinics, pharmacies, law enforcement, customs, health authorities, the main ones, but probably also other ones. Patients, of course. I've seen before, again, I come back to that very good presentation, the Rwanda FDA doing some awareness campaigns with the healthcare providers. We do not have that so often. I cannot speak for other countries. I can't speak for France, for instance. We do not have that. And this is, in my opinion, key. Coming back to the communication and to the recalls, which were mentioned before, some years ago, the side note now, we had to deal with the counterfeit of Pegasus in China. And we wanted to inform the health authorities about that, so that the health authorities may begin with a communication campaign. But the colleagues from Roche China told us in a very clever way, probably, that if we begin due to one case, on the other side, you can think that if one case has been detected in the legal supply chain, one falsified medicine of that case in the legal supply chain, you may have tons of them. And we propose to reach out to the health authority, to the police, really to do something, to discuss with the healthcare providers, physicians, nurses, and so on. But we have been told that if we do that, the healthcare providers would not prescribe Pegasus anymore. And then you have to find, and here I do not speak from a business perspective, I speak from a therapeutic perspective. Because due to maybe only one, at least this is the one which was known to us, you would make, or you would create a kind of drug shortage if you do not have any generic or any alternative on the market, and many patients may suffer due to the fact that some physicians would not prescribe that product anymore. Then you see here that it's not so easy. Let's continue. We had a first meeting with the local health authority, which is named COFEBRIS in Mexico, and it was really challenging to get a meeting slot. It really depends on the culture, on the resources they have within these health authorities. And our trip to Mexico was guided by the meeting with COFEBRIS, because having a meeting with a local distributor and another medical institution was not so complicated. But with COFEBRIS, it was really complicated. And once we got it, we organized the other slots. We went there with some people from Roche Mexico, but also a security colleague from Roche, 5 Roche people. We have seen that there were many people from Cofebris, the local health authority, which was a good signal. There was a simultaneous translation, which does not facilitate the discussion, because if you have 1 hour discussion, you can only speak during half an hour because you have the translation. And I'm not an English native speaker. I'm also not good in Spanish. That means you can imagine how the wording could be transformed, or the message you would like to convey can be changed between what I say and what comes to the ears of the colleagues from Cofebris. Nevertheless, Cofebris was happy or was satisfied to see us, to have also some global Roche representatives, showing that the company was taking the issue seriously, as Cofebris is of course aware of the issue they have with product crime in Mexico. Then we presented the different items we had, the different issues we have with that market. The retention of the complaint and the suspected samples as Cofebris for prosecution reasons. This is another part which makes the issue sometimes complicated. When Cofebris, the local health authority, is detecting a suspected counterfeit in the field in Mexico, they do not want to send us the complaint sample for prosecution reasons. Because if that case would go to court, if they sent us the complaint sample, the people who could go to jail and so on could mention, yes, but we don't know what happened between the moment the complaint sample was taken from Cofebris and the moment Roche did the investigation. Therefore, once we had a prosecutor who came from Peru to Roche in Basel during 2 weeks, was close to the lead investigator, to the chemist and so on, or to the people doing the analytics, in order to make sure that the sampling is done in a correct way. But this is just a no-go. It's just not possible from a resource perspective, from a financial perspective, to have that for each and every case. That means the in-between solution was that Roche Mexico would visit Cofebris for a visual inspection. But the investigation is limited. Lazar mentioned in a very good way before that if the aspect of the falsified medicine is very good, let's take, for instance, that it's about a genuine packaging material. Even the bottle is genuine, but inside you have a fake drug. You wouldn't, visually spoken, be able to see the difference if you are not an expert. And if we speak about genuine packaging material, but falsified content, you wouldn't be able to do the difference. That means the investigation is limited. Then Mexico mentioned also, Cofebris mentioned also that our flow of information was too much and was too early, that we notify Cofebris in a too early stage. I come back to the last session. As soon as we are aware, not as a company, but as a world, about a suspected counterfeit, which is confirmed, we should, of course, move forward and inform the appropriate stakeholders, at the end, patients, because we are all patients, or we will be patients once, for sure. And I think the speed of information is key. One example, we had a Celcept case in Iran some weeks ago. I can speak about that without being confidential, because a rapid alert was issued. But we haven't received the rapid alert. The rapid alert is, as you know, a system which helps to inform health authorities about sub-quality issues, but also about falsified medicines. By chance, we have received that rapid alert through our affiliate in Australia, and we could see in that rapid alert that the box falsified medicines was not ticked. That means for us, it was an issue inherent to the manufacturing of the Roche product. After some investigation, some phone calls from Roche Iran with the Iranian FDA, we understood that within the facilities of the health authority in Iran, there were some big suspicions about falsified medicine. But this took months. That means the flow of information was not good. And it was the very first information was in November 2021. And we managed that case in February 2022. Just imagine 4 months. If you have one case, I repeat myself, one case in the supply chain, you may have tons of these cases. And where we lose control in the supply chain is that these goods, counterfeits, which came from Turkey, but I do not know the source, if these goods were manufactured by an underground manufacturing site in Turkey and ended up in Iran, was sent to Iran through parallel trading. In Europe, for instance, when you have parallel trading, you should inform the company there is a depackaging and a new packaging. You can track and trace much more. In some countries, it's not an obligation. Then you lose the supply chain. As if, as a company Roche, we sell some products to a supplier in Turkey, we know that that supplier will not export the goods, but we do not know to which next supplier he will be selling the goods, and then another one and another one, and you lose completely the track of the supply chain. Next point, the waste management issue. We see very often, at least the cases we have from a Roche perspective, I can only speak for Roche, that we have to deal with many different falsified medicines cases. But one of them is about stolen genuine packaging material in hospitals. And the bad guys are, of course, in a very clever way, stealing these goods, and as I mentioned before, filling out again the bottles with water or with a glucose, for instance, solution. Sometimes you can see some traces of the genuine API, because when the nurse or the physician administered it to the patient, you had at the end some leftovers. And then it's really easy if you find the folding box, you have the bottle with a genuine label, you put some water inside. On the internet, you can buy some alu caps and close again the goods and make them saleable, not on the legitimate supply chain, but on the illegal supply chain. That's why having serialization, single unit coding, all anti-counterfeiting features is key, of course, but this is for the legal supply chain. If we speak about the illegitimate supply chain, then you can forget serialization, of course. That's why having in place some apps in order to check the serialization number and so on, this may help, but this is about a lot of resources. And even in Europe, where serialization was put in place some years ago, we are not yet fully good. We have many false positives. That means alerts when the scanner is not working correctly. There is a second scan, which means, okay, red light, this was already scanned, but we often hear that it's a technical issue due to the scanner, for instance. That means we wanted to participate, or we proposed to Cofebris, the local HA, to participate in a communication campaign in hospitals to fight stealing and refilling of used vials, so that nurses and physicians are putting the used packaging material in bins which are closed, where nobody can enter again and take them. Then we still have another issue in Mexico about the suppliers. Some suppliers are authorized by both Roche and Cofebris versus some suppliers authorized only by Cofebris. If Roche does not work with some specific suppliers, there are some reasons. Trust is probably not given. On the other side, we cannot act against Cofebris. Cofebris is a state, is a government. They can decide which suppliers are authorized or not. This is to give you, in a nutshell, the overview about the issues we see from a Roche perspective in Mexico, and explains you why we decided to do that. So yes, just to finish with Cofebris, it was a little bit unfair because when we went there, some months later, 1 year later, there was a change of the president, the government, and we understood that many people were maybe not fired or were not working for Cofebris anymore, that there was no stability in this organization, and all the work we made, we didn't do it for nothing, but the relationships we had, the collaboration and so on was difficult to continue due to that. But this is how it is. This is politics. So a meeting with a medical institution, you will also understand why. It's a part of the Mexican social security. That means really on the ground working with patients. And the atmosphere and the collaboration was also very good. And this was our aim, to have that. And Roche Mexico got a nice call after the meeting. You know, sometimes between the health authority and the pharmaceutical industry, it could be tough, but here it was very good. And we also came in a very humble way to discuss with them, not to control them or to do an audit. We mentioned the strong waste management issue in public hospitals, as I mentioned before, as containers were implemented so far only by Cofebris in the private sector. Really easy to understand. The private sector has more money than the public hospitals. And yes, all the cases we received, we could see, and based on the data that they came, I speak about the cases with refilling of goods, reusing genuine folding boxes, came from public hospitals. But we had another issue, and that's why I wanted to speak with them. When Roche is sending products to Mexico, some of these units are planned for the public sector and some other ones for the private sector. And the ones for the public sector gets in Mexico, in the country, an additional, it's maybe not a manufacturing step, but a little stamp here. You can see Salud Prohibida sur Venta. That means that cannot be sold. It is really for the public sector. But this legend is easily erased. And some people, we understood that some people could steal these goods, or maybe patients, I have no clue, but could get these goods probably for free, could erase the legend, and went to hospitals, private maybe hospitals or other places, in order to sell the goods for a cheaper price, of course, but nevertheless, they made some money with that. You could immediately mention, yes, but it's not substandard. It's not a falsified medicine. It is a genuine one for which only the legend was erased. Yes, but nevertheless, there is a high risk that the cold chain is compromised, risk of manipulation, and so on. Side note again, some years ago in Italy, we had the case that the mafia, because it came out later, went into a hospital at midnight, was stolen many units, not only Roche units, but many medicines. And these medicines ended up in East European countries, and some months later ended up in the systemic circulation of patients, because we could reconciliate what was stolen and what came out, and one was completely manipulated with another content inside. That means, yes, we have to again be careful with genuine goods which are stolen, because that does not mean they are still good for or fit for use. What were the actions? Because the goal of this kind of initiatives is to have some action, some pragmatic actions at the end. And Roche Mexico worked on an improved printing process in order to make the legend much more difficult to be erased. Since then, statistically spoken, we do not see any of these issues anymore. That does not mean we do not have any issues with counterfeits in Mexico. but these specific cases with a legend which is erased and the goods sold to other people in the legal or illegal supply chain. Just again, as a side note, in Mexico, but in many other countries, we have within Roche an antibody which is used in the frame of the pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, for severe COVID patients. And we are currently bombarded with this kind of confirmed counterfeits. It's really amazing. And then we see again all these organizations, all people having that medicine normally for another indication, but selling a part of it, or trying to find genuine folding boxes, bottles, and so on, to put the aspect, or to get the aspect of a genuine one and to sell it. It's really terrific. The other point in that medical institution was to ask COCTI, which is the name of that institution, to improve the transfer process of medicines from the warehouse to public hospitals to limit the number of thefts. That means, again, here, before being a falsified medicine, you have to work in the supply chain, because, as I mentioned before, Roche is delivering the goods to Mexico. Mexico is adding the legend. From the Roche warehouse, it goes to COCTI, and from COCTI, it goes to the hospitals. Again, many steps in the supply chain. The best would be, and that was the conclusion, the frame of the case in Italy I mentioned 2 minutes ago, is that Roche, Italy, for instance, delivers directly to hospitals in order to avoid different steps in the supply chain. It's not an anti-counterfeit feature, but it's another way to fight against product crime. Last, because I'm maybe a little bit long, last point was with a local distributor. Why a distributor? Because before going to the patient, to the hospital, you have some distributors. And in the supply chain, you may have many things which could happen. And in the frame of the management of all these falsified medicines cases, we understood, yes, from the local colleagues, as Mexico is a very, very big country. The trucks are sometimes doing several thousands of kilometers in order to reach the endpoint. What does it mean? Again, product crime, theft, carjacking, or truck jacking, and so on, which is again another issue. Again, in that within the distributors, we had a warm welcome and a very good dialogue, because we mentioned from the beginning that it was not an audit. Again, we were not here to control them, to audit them, but to enter in a kind of collaboration, because we were, from a company perspective, with them. That means it should be a win-win situation. We have seen that they have a strong security team, and good, they are well prepared for incident management in case anything is missing or there is a fire and so on, because if there is a fire, you do not know what could happen. People may steal goods, or it could create drug shortages. What does that mean when you have a drug shortage? And this was also the case for the product I mentioned before in the frame of COVID-19. If the supply chain is tight, it opens the doors for counterfeiters to be successful in selling the falsified medicines. The warehouse was also well and clean and well maintained, and an electronic access control system was planned probably since then they put it in place. Nevertheless, my colleague from security, because I'm not an expert in that, made some recommendations in order to add some additional cameras to cover really the entire warehouse in case there is an issue. Then you would go back to the cameras to see the videos, what happened if there was a steal. What was not so good was a people check at the building entrance. Sometimes, like when you go into a soccer stadium or something, like you are controlled everywhere to see if you do not have a gun or a knife or something else. And this was not done in the best way. And my security colleague is used to mention that either you do it completely or absolutely not. And as people were aware that he was a security guy, he should have been done in the good way. It's like having a mask against COVID. As you know, if you put it here and your nose is still outside of the mask, it doesn't help you. It doesn't help you, absolutely not. Doing it in a good way or not good. Another point, important one, but I didn't check that the patrols, the police guys, security guys running or walking around the building, because in Mexico, they have to deal with these kind of thefts from product crime perspective. That's why we went there, as I mentioned before. It's not so easy. But the patrols we are doing each and every time, we were there 3 hours, each and every time the same way, which would be easy then for robbers to see, okay, these guys are here. We could enter through some other doors. There are some kind of items or things which are checked. That means 3 things: health authority, medical institution, distributor. We could have met with other stakeholders, but it's of course not easy, and it takes also a lot of time. We discuss also a lot with the Roche Mexican colleagues, really engaged and engaged also in order to raise the awareness. They made a kind of slide deck to be shared with the healthcare providers so that they are aware what they should check before administering a product, what they should do with the packaging material in order to make sure it is properly put in the trash. As lessons learned, same as in the last session, the success when you fight against product crime can only be achieved through collaboration between the pharmaceutical industry and external bodies. I'm quite broad here. External bodies are health authorities, I mentioned it before, patients, TVs, yes, many bodies. But nevertheless, relationships need to be good. I repeat, we didn't do an audit. The goal was to do a collaboration, and the relationships have to be good also with the health authorities. When I see what is done in Rwanda, again, I repeat myself, I'm amazed, because this is what we would like to achieve also as a company, to work in the same way. When there is a rapid alert that is issued, that we can discuss what can we do from a company perspective, what can the health authorities do from a governmental perspective. And sometimes I'm struggling with that, because I think if we do a lot from a company perspective, it could be seen as, okay, we would like to sell as many units as possible. Of course, we are a business. If it comes from the health authorities, it could be seen as a state body who wants to protect the population. And yes, final word, as before, again, I will read it while constantly improving the anti-counterfeiting features of medicinal products. It is key, of course, but raising the awareness on the danger of counterfeit is equally important to protect patient safety. And our industry, of course, because our industry stays important to deliver some medicines to the patients. So that's it for the presentation. I hope I was not too long. Thanks for your attention, and let me know if you have some questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hugo, for this fruitful session. It was really amazing how you explained why Roche considered Mexico a hotspot country for drug crime. And thank you so much for explaining the problem that Roche is trying to put effort to solve them. And it was very amazing how Roche is learning from every meeting. So thank you so much. Actually, we are having some questions.
Yes, sure.
Our first question is, in case of patient harm from falsified medicine, who will be responsible for it? Will it be the pharmacist or a regulatory authority, or what?
Yes, that's a good question. Sometimes we do not want, it's not that we do not want, it's maybe the wrong word, take too many responsibilities. I will mention it in another way. It depends on the case. For instance, in Iran, what I mentioned before with CellCept, and again, I can speak about that because there was a rapid alert. we understood that the parallel trader was the responsible for the delivery to the patients. That means Roche was not initiating the recall because the local health authority in Iran asked the parallel traders to recall these goods, but not to recall the genuine goods, to recall the units which have been provided by the parallel trader. Of course, in the frame of the legal investigation or criminal investigation, if you go back to the source, the goal would be to punish that criminal organization. When a patient is armed, it's a good question, because at the end of the day, the name of Roche, Novartis, Eli Lilly, and so on is written on the box. If it's about a falsified medicine, we are not responsible, but we have the duty to try to protect patients and to do as much as possible in order to have the best anti-counterfeit features in place, to communicate in the best way. Gray zone. If the pharmacist, if you can prove that the pharmacist, for instance, was aware that he had on his her shelf counterfeits, he could be considered as responsible for that. But this is really complicated. On the other side, it could also be the responsibility of the patient, because if I go on the street and buy from someone on the street a medicine, I am responsible because I should buy medicines from legal sources, whether it is a physical pharmacy or a website which is linked to a legal pharmacy.
Okay, that's great. Also, there's another question related to the same thing about the counterfeit product. If it was detected, who will be charged for the cost?
It's yeah. I do not know that. It depends. Again, if we speak about parallel trading, that means not the Roche official supply chain, we would not be as a cost, but the parallel traders, that means the business doing exporting and importing the goods, would be the one charged for the costs. Of course, now there is another detail. We had one case I think in Colombia once. There were some counterfeits which were into the facilities of Roche, because there was a third party, a kind of, they had a specific constellation over there. The warehouse was located near or within the Roche facilities. And at that moment, there was an employee who opened genuine units in order to steal these units and put inside falsified goods, and could close it without having a tamper evidence which was broken. And these goods were released to the market.
Yes.
And then we were obliged, we were not obliged. We decided when we heard about that, because there were some market complaints about side effects, we could get a complaint sample. We could see that the product which was inside of the complaint sample was not a Roche product, based on the chemical analysis, of course, and the visual inspection. And then as a company, we decided to recall the entire batch. At that moment, we were not aware how many falsified units were included in that entire batch. That means we recalled the entire batch. We informed the health authorities, we informed the hospitals, and so on. I cannot remember, but some of the units which came back, some falsified units were included there, and the costs were for us, because at that moment it was a non-Roche, but a Roche third-party employee. Again, it depends.
Yes, thank you so much. Another question say, can the pharmaceutical industry come together under some shape or form to take a common approach similar to Roche's action? And if not, Why would this be difficult?
I think many things are done. Lazar spoke about the WHO. I see more and more initiatives about that, but it's sometimes a little bit complicated. It depends also on the costs, on the resources. I mentioned before, serialization is applied in Europe. In developing countries, it's much more difficult. Even if in Europe, I remember that in France, for instance, the pharmacists were not happy. The hospital pharmacists were not happy because they had to hire some people. And you know, nowadays, all the budgets are really tight and it's really difficult. Why did they complain in France? Because when the goods are welcome or reach the hospital, you have to check each and every unit. It takes time and so on. To answer your question, there are many associations trying to fight against counterfeits, but I think we still have room for improvement. And again, I come back, I do not insist, but I come back to what I heard before from Rwanda. A lot. I would expect, but who am I to mention that? I would expect many health authorities doing this kind of public awareness. We should not wait until we have many deaths before doing that, because Lazar mentioned, and I know this data, WHO in developing countries, that you have 10% of all the units which are sold, which are falsified medicines, which is amazing. It's amazing. And in some other countries, up to 30%, 30%, which is used. And on the internet, I think it is 50%. That means, yes, I hope that in the future, we work also with Interpol from a company perspective. Many things are happening, but I think that topic deserves more. I do not see very often information in France, at least, in newspapers or at TV shows, warning the population to pay attention regarding product crime.
Okay, thank you so much. Our last question say, in your opinion, did the globalization of the pharma industry increase the case of counterfeits?
Yes, probably. I do not want to do any finger pointing here, but I heard in the frame of the pandemic COVID that 20 years ago, but correct me if I'm not right, 20 years ago you had 80% of the APIs manufactured in Europe. I speak about Europe because I live in France, and this is what I heard. Nowadays you have 80% of the APIs manufactured in China or in Asia. I'm not mentioning something which is not how to mention it, not polite, but we know that, for instance, in China, counterfeits, not only about medicines but about many things, is maybe not a sport, but we know that for other stuff, clothes or bags, or I have no clue. Therefore, probably it plays a role. On the other side, in India, I've seen on the TV last time in India, you can buy whatever you want. You can even choose the name of the medicine you would like to buy, and if the video I've seen was, it is perfect, clean, everything what you would like to see in a legal manufacturing site, but it manufactures falsified medicines. Versus what I've seen, it was a famous picture I've seen some 10 years ago. Sometimes I still see it, Viagra, which is one of the most counterfeited drug. And there was a picture about an underground manufacturing site with terrific tools, but at the end of the day, they could, because I've seen pictures of the genuine Viagra versus, well, you have to be careful with pictures, of course, but nevertheless, genuine Viagra versus falsified with naked eyes, it's just impossible to do the difference. That means, yes, I would say yes, that the globalization helps to fight on one side with the internet and so on, and people more collaborating, but it probably helps also if you have less your manufacturing sites under control to go in the directions of more falsified units. But I cannot really answer that question. I would say yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. Also, I would like to know the opinion of Mr. Lazar about the same question, which was the globalization increase the case of counterfeits. Yes, okay.
It's a little bit hard to respond, but I could have the position like the one of Dr. Hugo's. Yes, I can say yes. As far as having different sources of the active pharmaceutical ingredients and having different systems, regulatory systems, inspection, which are not strong in different countries, can lead to SF medical products. Yeah, that's not a specific or straight answer, but I can answer that in that way. Thank you.
And last comment from my side, you see with globalization, sometimes we are missing some starting materials, and I do not speak only about the pharmaceutical industry. I hear sometimes that in the automotive industry, it's complicated to get a new car sometimes because some items, tools are missing, and this is the same here with the globalization. As soon as there is an issue, in Ukraine, for instance, some manufacturing sites are stopped, and it triggers shortages. Here we speak about medicines, and shortages means the open doors for counterfeiters. You know, maybe it can increase falsified medicines due to this aspect. For instance, besides the one I mentioned before, that things are coming from different parts of the world where the regulation is different, and could be also the open doors for more suppliers, and the more suppliers you have, the more difficulties you have to control your the way of the goods.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Hugos, for your brilliant discussion.
You're
so
welcome.
Now, thank you. Our last question is directed to Mr. Lazar. One of the participants is asking, how do you rate the progress Rwanda FDA has achieved in tackling with the falsified medical product nowadays compared to the last 5 years?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. There is a tremendous and a remarkable step in combating or preventing those SF medical products in Rwanda, because in the last 5 years, we do not yet have different records, because maybe the regulatory system was not yet established, because now Rwanda FDA is 4 years. It's recently established, but we have done our best, of course, to set different regulatory functions, including inspection, licensing, registration, assessment registration, good manufacturing, premises inspection, and different collaboration and networkings were made in place to prevent those SF medical products. Nowadays, we do not have street vendors of medical products. We have checks at the port of entry, which was not in the past. And all those contributes to the quality of medicines in the country. So briefly, I can say that there is a tremendous step towards good quality and safe medical products in the country, and they will keep the momentum to protect the public health.
Mr. Hughes, you wanted to say something?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. I just would like to thank you again for the invitation. I took the time as the colleagues Shabir, Lazar, but I think this this kind of what you organized here is very important to raise the awareness, because we come back to what was mentioned before. And this is a way, by discussing about that here in the webinar, but also in other places. I made it also some days ago in another one. I think this is really important. We will not save the world, but by sharing the words about that, and thanks for that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hughes and Mr. Lazar, for the fruitful session. Mr. Shabir had to leave the session because he had to catch a flight. So it's unfortunate that he's not here in the discussion that we were having, a really fruitful discussion. It's an honor to have our dear speakers here and have their insight about the counterfeits and how and see different perspectives. Basically, we saw from 3 different continents almost. Like we saw from Europe, Mexico, we saw from Rwanda, from Africa, and we saw from the United States. It's such a pleasure for me to be able to contact you guys and make sure that this event went successful. And I hope the participants as well. Thank you so much for attending our session. I hope you guys also enjoyed the session about how fruitful it was. So I'm just really glad that the session went really well. And thank you so much to my dear moderators, Hagar and Yuvete, who's here. And I think we would like to end the session here, and that would be it. If you guys have any questions, we would definitely send it to the speakers through email if they could answer it for you guys as well. So that would be fantastic if they don't mind. And we would just like to end the session by mentioning that there's a new event that we have that will be coming on April. I'll just be showing that 1 second. This will be our next webinar. It'll be on April 9th, April 29th. And thanks for joining in, and see you guys soon around. And I really do hope the session was a fruitful one. Thank you very much for your presence. See you guys.
Thank you very much.
See you guys. Bye-bye. See you.